All right, I continue to work on this a little at a time. Right now, what you see there is the first detector. That's what they call it. Uh, there's two coils on it. It's an IF can, but they call it the first detector. Now in it is a mica mold. Let me make sure it's in the frame. I don't have all the fancy equipment everybody else seems to have. This capacitor is called a mica mold. They're famous for being bad. This one's leaky. And the other one, there's one at the other end up in here. It's shorted. All right. So we're talking so far three capacitors in two IF cans that are bad. That's where we're at now. That's the tally. Now, in order to get to be in here, I had to take a plate off. I had to undo three screws on the bottom of the IF can, and I had to cut a wire near a terminal so I'd have enough slack to pull it out so I can get that bottom capacitor out of there because it's held in with bolts, and it's 0.01. So the first IF that was bypassed, the first IF had two 0.1 capacitors. One of them was shorted. I replaced both of them because I don't want to go back in this radio again. Now this one, the second, the next IF, which is the first detector, I'm picking them out of not in order, just physically in order. It has 2.01 capacitors that are bad. So that's where we're at now. I'm doing this just to show you that when people recap a radio and they don't go inside the IF cans, this is the second radio, actually third. Some of the NC 57s I had bad caps in the IF cans. And a lot the really good IF cans have two tuning capacitors on the top, so the capacitors never go bad. But that's really good radios. This radio's okay, but in other words, uh, those mica mold capacitors at 70 years, they're bad. But as soon as I saw the mica mold on it, I knew it was bad. Now I didn't notice what this other one was yesterday. Let me see if I can see a name on it. Gonna need glasses too. All right, let me get my glasses. See, this is what you run into if you really want to fix a radio. And it's a harder radio. Yeah, it's mica mold also. This one here from yesterday, it's mica mold. They're known for being just crap. But after 70 years, you got to expect it. Now, you got to remember, this radio has never been used. So I'm telling you, capacitors just go bad sitting there. Now, if you watch Shango a lot, he went to a guy's house. I guess the guy died, and they're auctioning his stuff off. And Shango bought a bunch of capacitors. Now, when I saw, wow, I'm just looking at a real thin wire here. I'm like, don't bump that wire and break it. Shango bought a bunch of capacitors, and then in one of the next episodes, he was trying to dry the capacitor out, and it was like a mica mold, and I was laughing because I told you they go bad just sitting there, and that's because when they were sealed originally, there was an atmosphere in there, and that atmosphere makes the plating on the plates, which is it's silver, it oxidizes, and after 70 years, it oxidizes enough. Those little particles of oxide run down inside the capacitor, are pushed their way through the capacitor, and then eventually it shorts out. I know a lot of people, oh, it's sealed. You must have a crack in the seal. I went through all this with these comments from people, and then I found the Holy Grail. I went looking on the internet, and I found a paper, and it was from a magazine, and the guy explained how many silver mica capacitors were starting to go bad, and this is in the 60s. So capacitors that were made early 50s were only lasted about 12 years, and they were starting to see the failures. And this is when other people, it must have a crack in this. I took one of them apart, and I could put the capacitor together and make it short, and then move the contactors further apart. So what I found was it's cool. I can't think of the name of the metal, but Shango, when he works on radios, it's just a type of metal, and it grows whiskers, and that metal in there is also in that capacitor. So if the oxidized uh, silver doesn't do the capacitor in, the contacts that go on each end of the capacitor inside grow whiskers and then short the thing out. But that I just wanted to show you, if you buy one of these radios, you will be taking it apart if you really want it to work right. Now you got to remember, I did a resurrection on this. It does get stations, but I know how well it should work because I have other ones just like it. The BC348 is like this one. The difference is the frequency range and the IF cans and the BC348 are a little different. The voltage is different on this thing. This radio is 12 volts to light the filament, and then high voltage for the plates. So the BC348, unless you rewire it, it's a 24 volt heater system. You know, they're very similar radios. And when people talk about the BC348 and the BC314 or 12, they say they're a lot alike, and they're really not. They're to a beginner, you're going to run into trouble. Now, right here in the frame, this is an oil capacitor. It's got oil in it. It's probably a 0.1, and right above here, going up. All right, this one here. Why is it looking so big? Let me see. Oh, okay. There's one here, one here, one here. These are the capacitors. The guy took not a jigsaw, a handsaw. Oh, a scroll saw? No, it's a jigsaw. He took a jigsaw to it and cut them open, and then changed the insides. Now, I haven't tested those yet, and you know I have this tester I built. I got the circuit from Popular Electronics. One of my videos shows the page it's on, how it works, and I did that. My capacitance checker checks the capacitor for over 100 volts. Now, the other guy has one that does it at 35. Capacitors that are used around tubes, they break down over around 90 volts, something like that. They start to conduct. So if you use a 35 volts tester, it'll show the cap being still good. Now the capacitor tester, probably an ICO or a Heathkit's got that magic eye, that one will show you the capacitor is leaky, and you don't get a sharp, the eye doesn't move sharp. The eye opens and closes, it gets very muddy, and you're looking at it, and you know that capacitor is leaky. And any kind of leakage, you're going to lose gain. That's all there is to it. Now, if you had a leaky capacitor in an audio section, and it's a 0.1, it's probably okay. You'd get away with it. But when you have a bad capacitor, a 0.01 or a 0.1 bypass capacitor in the IF section or the front end. Now, I know after I get these IF cans done, then I know if it's still bad, I got to go up into the front end, and each RF amp is a separate box that I have to go in. And before I go in, I just look on the diagrams and stuff to figure out what's really inside, if there's any mica mold capacitors in that are bad. But I think this is going to be a long road. If you looked at my Hellcrafters SX42, or was it a 43? Anyway, so let's say SX42. Every capacitor in that radio was bad, and I changed them all. And then I realized I started doing alignment, and the guy had turned every capacitor that was movable. He turned it. He screwed all the plungers for all the IF cans. He screwed them all in. This thing here seems to be not bodged so far. I have found some notes on pieces of the metal, and I get a little suspicious. But you got to remember, a lot of these dealers, they have a way to power this thing up, and then they know they got something that they can't change, and then they, as is, they'll say it powers up if it lights up. There's all kinds of stuff they do, but they're geniuses. They're absolute geniuses, and they don't have any scruples. And I always get thumbs down whenever I mention the dealers on eBay. I have a CD that's lost in the mail so far, and the guy, when you go in on in the eBay on his channel or his website, these pages come down over the eBay page, and if you go look at his rating, it says excellent. He's got all these, and then up on the right hand corner, it says original or something view. You click on that, and you see his real view. He's got almost 2,000 go screw yourself reviews. People say this guy's the worst, but he's got a way of putting a page in there that comes down so you won't see that. Also, when you go to email him back, you can't do it. So if I get mad enough, I'll go call eBay up and give them the name. Let them go check his website out, or his channel, or his store, and see what he's pulled. But he's got a lot of people pissed, and some people say they order a book from him. It's a book company. They order a book from him 3 months before they get it, and then other people have gotten through to him, and they say it takes several days before he'll answer. It's a $10 movie I'm missing, but at some point I'm starting to get mad at these dealers, and a lot of them do videos on YouTube crying, "Oh, they made me do this." You deserve it. You're on eBay. You deserve what they did to you because you're playing games with somebody's money. But I just wanted to show you, I'm still at this, and today's goal was to put the capacitors in number 1, which is here. It's back together with 2 new caps, and then this one here has 2 bolted on .01s, 1 on each end, 1 on this end, 1 on the other end, and I had to loosen it. I have to do all this because that capacitor is bolted in. You can't, you need that room. In order to get that cap out, you have to be able to move it enough to get the screwdriver in there. So I'm showing you, what the other guy don't show you. I have a new chair I could sit in, but the leather's coming off it. I bought one of them computer chairs, and then I bought a second one as a backup. Well, the second one sat in a room. I didn't use it for 3 years. So the other day, one of my parts broke on the first chair, so I wheeled it into the other room. I wheeled a new chair in here. I sit on it, I get up, all the leather came off on my clothes. So the chair is good for 3 years, whether you sit on it or not. See, it's like the capacitors. They've never had power on it before, but they went bad on their own. I think that's it. All right, that's it.